we implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. Those words of St. Paul in his second letter to the Corinthians set the tone, the theme for this Ash Wednesday, and indeed the whole season of Lent. Be reconciled to God. That's what Ash Wednesday and Lent are all about. And I suppose it's a question that we would ask ourselves: if we're to be reconciled to God, why is that reconciliation necessary? What is it that separates us from God to begin with? Well, of course, that's what sin is all about. Sin that has different dimensions and different effects in our life. We think, first of all, the original sin, in which we are all conceived and born, the original sin that we inherit from our first parents, Adam and Eve, the original sin that separates us from God from the very beginning, the original sin that's finally washed away through the waters of baptism. Then we think about the social sin, the sin that's part of our world, our nation, our community, our society, and our culture, in which we participate and share in some way. The sins against life, abortion and euthanasia, among others. The racism that emerges time to time in our culture. The political corruption and various forms of violence, the pornography, the terrible things we see in our world and our culture today. Somehow we are involved in that because we are part of the community that allows it. We are part of the human family that allows it. So we too are immersed in the social sins of our time. And then, of course, there's the personal sin, the sin that you and I are painfully aware of in our own personal and daily lives that we try to confront if we're serious about our faith. Sins like anger and greed and substance abuse and dishonesty and lying and gossip, impurity, all these things that we struggle with in our own spiritual journey and our own striving for sanctity and holiness. There are various forms of sin. They affect us in different ways, but we need to take sin very seriously. Sin is real and it is dangerous. Sin causes enormous suffering in the world. And if left unchecked, if we don't take sin seriously, it's like weeds that grow up in a garden, weeds that grow up in the garden of our soul that choke off the life within us. Sin is real and dangerous, and if left unchecked, it can separate you from God for all eternity. That's why we need to take sin very seriously, and why Lent is so important and so valuable for us. Because Lent gives us the spiritual weapons we need to overcome the temptation and sin in our lives. Our prayers, our fasting and sacrifices, and our good works. All these things are the spiritual weapons we need to grow in strength and in virtue and to overcome the temptation and vice and sin to which we are involved all the time. The prayer, the fasting, the good works. We do these things not just for their own sake, but to make us stronger, to purify our souls, to help us to be closer to God, to be more like Jesus. So, dear brothers and sisters, as you receive the ashes today, which we're about to do in just a moment now, I urge you not to do so lightly, casually. Receiving the ashes, it's not a blessing. It's not some kind of magical, superstitious good luck charm. Makes you feel better. The ashes you will wear on your forehead are an outward sign of an interior spiritual commitment. They're an outward sign of the spiritual journey you are about to begin today and continue throughout the season of Lent. It is a journey that will lead you to share in the suffering, death, and resurrection of Christ at Easter time. It's a journey that will take you from sin to grace, God's grace, and from death to life.